Hi, and thanks for joining me today on this very quick whistle-stop tour on English Language Paper 2, Question 4. Now, Question 4 is all about the writer's attitudes and perspectives, and I think it's important to realise that for this question, we really need to hone in on the way that the writer is approaching their text and the way that they are choosing to articulate themselves. This question is, of course, worth 16 marks on the paper, so that it's really, really important that we get it right. It's the big meaty one for section A, and we need to make sure that we're bringing as much to the table as possible. So in this 10 minutes, I want to really hone in on understanding the question, how we can annotate it effectively, and then how we can make sure that we're developing our response. Now, for me, it's all about understanding that success criteria, because you need to know that success criteria as well as the examiners. In our case, we need to know that we are comparing writers' ideas and perspectives, and we're showing how these are conveyed across two or more texts. In our circumstance, we are always looking at the two texts that are put in front of us on the day. Now, we're always aiming for that level 4 response, and in order to do that, we need to be able to compare those ideas and perspectives. And we need to be able to do that by analysing, and that's very much a case of being able to identify the different ideas and perspectives, show an understanding of them, but also show an understanding about how they are effective. So you need to be able to say what tones are used, what perspective is used, and how that can be really, really, really effective in allowing us to see where they're going with it. So what are they trying to say? What are they bringing to the table? It always talks about this idea of selecting a range of judicious supporting detail. What that basically means is that, are you using a range of quotations to support your interpretation, which is so important to do. It's that evidence trail that we need to be providing. The question itself is one that very rarely changes. Okay, if you think that for paper 1, question 4, it is very much those bullet points are there to support you in what you can include. For paper 2, question 4, I would say that those bullet points are more there to support you in that success criteria, and just a little reminder to you perhaps that maybe you need to give a bit more of an analysis of your ideas, because what I'm noticing through different mocks, through different example assessments, is that people are really good at picking up on, once they've got a grasp of tones, which we'll come on to in a minute, it's very easy to identify the quotations for it, but then it's what we do with that. It's what effect that those quotations have had. It's the use of them and how we can articulate our analysis of it. Now, the question itself, so for example, in this circumstance, it's the question you need to refer to as whole of source A and the whole of source B. Compare how the writers convey their different perspectives and feelings about the experiences at sea. Now, whether it asks for different perspectives or whether it asks for their feelings and experiences in the sea is completely, that is obviously down to the question itself. But what you've got to do is really pick it apart, make sure that you're focusing on the writer and make sure that you're focusing on the key areas that it is asked for in there. Now, how can we do that, and how can we make sure that this question is supportive and shows the best side of us? Well, actually, we can do that from the very start. And the first times that we are reading the source, we can be making little notes to ourselves so that when we do come to question 4, we're able to just support those notes. And one of the things that I tell quite a lot of people to do is just make a note of the tones at the end. You can always start off small. Is it a positive, negative? Is it happy, sad? And yes, obviously, we're going to expand that vocabulary further. But what it does is it gives us a familiarity with the text from the writer's perspectives. We learn about the context from the boxes at the top of each of the sources, but giving us an understanding of the writer's attitudes and perspectives from the very beginning means that when we do get to question 4 and we might be feeling a little bit tired, ready for question 5, we're able to have a starting point and we'll have those foundations. Now, it's all about being able to recognize the tones, but also being able to make sure that you're understanding how words or phrases could be altered and how that actually could alter the tone of the piece. Now, for example, it might be a case of that, if we're saying that it sounds that someone is quite scared, that's great, but are they sounding quite confused? They might be quite, feeling quite insecure. It might sound like they're feeling quite bewildered by it all. It's about really honing in on what specifically that you want to say. Take, for example, the 4 pieces that we've got here. When we look at anything like it's appalling that this should happen, You want to be thinking about that word choice of appalling, and we want to be thinking and questioning to ourselves, why has this person chosen to tell us that it is appalling that this should happen? You know, that might show that they are quite shocked, that they are disappointed, that they are discouraged by it. And what stands out from that is that word, it's appalling. You know, think about what happens if it changed and it became, it's shocking that this should happen. It's not good that this should happen. They all have a different level of attack on them, so to speak. Take, for example, in statement 2, it was such an exquisite day. Now, this idea of it being an exquisite day, why isn't it a good day? Why is it exquisite? That's, you know, it's a bit more hyperbolic, isn't it? It's a bit more accentuated. For the third one, take a look in particular at the use of the punctuation. So we've got that exclamatory statement. We can't possibly continue like this. Imagine if that exclamatory statement was in fact a question mark and it was more of an interrogative statement, or even if it was just a bullet point. Either way, what it's bringing to the table is perhaps a sign of frustration, a sense of shock and awe. For question 4, it's about looking at the whatever is the matter. So we might hone in on this idea of whatever is the matter, you know, instead of what is the matter. Perhaps we're getting an element of frustration in there, or concern. It's about really looking at specific word choices. Now, in a previous video, I've looked at paper 2, question 2, and we've gone through and we've looked at different annotations on it. When you look at those annotations, we've got things like, you know, just a bit of a recap on paper 2, question 2. It was looking at things like how poverty represents that they are poor, or, you know, we looked at worsen severely. Now, if you, and just, I'm not going to write on it purely because the writing is absolutely horrible at the moment without a pen. But if you was to look at this idea of it worsen severely, you might say that this person, this writer, Deborah Coles, is suggesting that they are quite disgusted at this fact, or they are shocked, or they are appalled at this. And then you'd ask, well, why is that the case? Why have you put those words? Well, perhaps it's the word severely. Look at the word severely and look at this idea as to it's very much accentuating that hyperbole of it. It's not just worsened slightly, has it? It's worsened severely. So when we're looking at something like how has the writer compared the different feelings and perspective towards prisoners, we're taking what we've done for question 2 and what we've done for question 3, and we're using it to support, where possible, our question 4 responses. So that's why it's so important to make sure that our annotations are always there to help us, because the clearer that we are with our annotations and what we expect out of it, the better. So what are my big hints and tips for this question? Well, the first one is to obviously make sure that you're giving it the time that it's due. You want to be spending 5 minutes really getting some solid annotations down, along with 20 minutes of making sure that you are writing about all of those different points. You want to aim for a solid 3 really good attitudes and perspectives, at least for both of the sources, so that you can really hone in on using the quotations to support those attitudes and perspectives in as much detail as you can do. You want to keep referring back to, at the end, those bullet points to ask yourself that question. Have I compared the different perspectives and feelings? Have I talked about the methods that the writer uses? You know, you want to make sure that actually you've honed in on the why has this word choice been used, why has this statement been used, and how does that, you know, really draw to light the attitudes and perspectives that are being provided to us. If you need any more help or support on it, do look at the paper 2 question 2 and what will be coming up on the paper 2 question 3 as a step up to reaching and responding to this question. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope you found this useful.